And welcome back, George Norrie, along with Hugh Newman. Hugh, it must be fascinating to discover all these incredible sites.
Yeah, no, it's pretty mind-blowing. There's several more kind of under excavation right now in the region around Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. I mentioned a couple. One of them is called Birch, which is a fascinating site that was in the news last year because they found this kind of enclosure that appears to be an elliptical enclosure that's carved out of the bedrock. And on one edge of the bench, the panel, has this kind of man kind of holding his phallus with these animals carved on either side of him. And this is thought to be the world's first narrative scene where it's kind of describing a story, although it could have astrological significance because the name Sayburch, S-A-Y-B-U-R-C, is really interesting because Say means counting, and Birch, B-U-R-C, the little thing coming off the sea, means sign of the zodiac, and Birch, B-I-R-C, in Kurdish, means tower or watchtower. And so even the names of these sites could be encoding what they were used for in prehistoric times.
Elaborate a little bit more, too, on the Book of Enoch and what it might have said.
Well, yeah, there's some interesting stories in that because they talk about this time and this angel Uriel, who was like one of the watchers, who was like these elite kind of beings from the ancient world. And Enoch was said to have been taken away by these watchers to these different lands and taking cords and going off to measure. And also they describe these watchers as having these skill sets of like astronomy, the stars, the landscape, geography, also different things like working with stone, working with metal and other such things. And these all seem to match skills that are evident at sites like Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. And so, is there a connection here, especially when we're talking about going off to measure, because we're now finding measurement systems and geometry encoded within these sites.
It's truly remarkable. It really is. Would you love to have been in a time machine, Hugh, to go back that far?
Oh, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? To see these sites as they were in their prime would be spectacular. Now, fortunately, we've got at the Shanlerfa Museum, which is temporarily closed due to flooding earlier this year, they've actually got a reconstruction of Enclosure D from Gobekli Tepe, and it is amazing. And once you get inside it, you realize the magnitude, the kind of temple, almost cathedral type nature of these, and so that's the only chance you're really going to get to be like inside one of these enclosures because they're very restrictive. You can't go right inside them unless you're one of the archaeologists working there. And so, yeah, they are very, very impressive, and that's the closest thing you're going to get to time traveling is to get a reconstructed version of the site.
Why does it seem like all these sites are buried?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're burying them. This is a big debate that's come out recently because they appear to be reconstructed and repaired almost. Some people have suggested they were deliberately buried. This is what Klaus Schmidt said a long time ago. And now the recent archaeologists claim, well, actually, they could have caved in over time because as more constructions were built up around them, they kind of collapsed. But I think it's probably a little bit of a mixture of both, especially at Gobekli Tepe, whereas Karahan Tepe certainly appears to have been kind of decommissioned, almost ritually damaged, and then buried. So why they buried them, we don't know. But the fact they did do that is brilliant today because we're getting preserved sites that have been preserved for thousands of years. If they were exposed to the elements all that time, there'd be nothing left. And so, because it's limestone, so, thank God they were buried because we're now getting to see them sometimes in pristine condition, some of the statues, some of the artifacts that are coming out. And with the new discoveries that have just been made, that have been all over the internet, all over the media, they found remarkable new statues at Karahan Tepe, a new enclosure with giant T-pillars. They found this remarkable boar statue at Gobekli Tepe, which they found has red, black, and white pigment on it, which means, well, actually, were these then painted, these sites? It's putting a whole other perspective into the mix.
Let's go to the phones, Hugh. Let's go to John, truck driving in Ohio, to get us started. Hey, John, go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, Hugh.
Hi.
I know we're talking about like buildings and sites, but I haven't heard anything about the crystal skulls that emanate the power. I don't know how many they were, but they were found in different places, and they too were, I think, buried as well. Is there an alien beginning on those, or were they created here on Earth, maybe Atlantis, and do they really have power in them?
What do you know of the crystal skulls, Hugh? Anything?
Yeah, I used to be fascinated by crystal skulls, actually, but they haven't found any at Gobekli Tepe, just in case you were wondering. But they have found other beautiful artifacts there. But, yeah, I mean, there's a big story about them. There's actually one not far from me in the British Museum as well. I think the most compelling one is the Mitchell Hedges skull, which is quartz. It was found in the Luban tomb, a site I've been to in Belize. And they found a smaller skull at Monte Alban as well, in a grave there. So they are certainly, some of them are certainly ancient. The stories associated with them are covered in the book, The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls, which I highly recommend. And you can get all the answers from that. But, yeah, they're very mystical, very powerful objects.
And when people are close to them, they give off some kind of energy, don't they?
That's what I've heard, yeah. I mean, I've actually seen a few myself, and yeah, some people say they're like, imbued with kind of magic. And I think even some of the artifacts from Gobekli Tepe they are imbued with some kind of power. I think people like, the Mayans involved with these skulls, for instance, and also the builders of Gobekli Tepe, these were kind of, shamanic people. They were kind of magicians and sorcerers, and they could give power to objects, and I think some of the stuff that's coming out of the ground is certainly kind of has that power, but we don't get access to them until they end up in museums.
West of the Rockies, Craig's with us in Chilliwack, Canada. Welcome to the show. Hi, Craig.
Hello, George. How are you doing?
Great. I hope you are too.
I am fine, thank you. Mr. Newman, I had a couple of questions, and I don't know, you mentioned crop circles earlier. Why do crop circles always happen in wheat fields? And have they ever had like a crop circle that's half, and then the other half is like in a pond or a pool of water? And then the other question was, a lot of people seem to think that Gobekli Tepe was buried, was washed over by water, and the monoliths there were covered in sand and dirt that way. What do you think of that?
Okay, crop circles, no, for sure. You do get some examples, actually, where they're kind of, there's half a crop circle and the other half kind of vanishes into a road or a kind of hedge and things like this. So you do get that sometimes, yeah. And, I mean, they may appear, they might be appearing all the time, like, in the middle of neighborhoods, but you can't sort of see them because they're just houses in the way. So who knows? I mean, they found them in ice, they found them in sand, they found them in mud, things like this. So, they're certainly a very odd phenomenon. As for Gobekli Tepe being sort of flooded, if you like, I mean, there are kind of, some people suggest that the biblical flood was during the era of Gobekli Tepe, going back nearly 12,000 years. But that was one of the early theories, actually. But now I think they've done enough analysis to know that there was a deliberate kind of burial and possibly a collapse at part of Gobekli Tepe. And so there's no real evidence for water there like you find perhaps at the Sphinx of Egypt and so forth. But, only a small percentage of these sites have been uncovered, so evidence of that may come forth.
Hugh, what's your guess on how they move the blocks of stone?
How they move the stone? This is a good question because some of the stones are quite a few tons. Now, luckily, they quarried them quite close to the site. Now, and also, I'm quite a fan of giants, and so I think giants were involved in it as well. But also, because if you go back into the old text, they talk about giants. But also, I believe that these ancient people who were very tuned in, very shamanic, I think they had powers. I think they had like psychic powers, they had telekinetic powers as well. So it could be one or all of these things.
Sound resonance, they had some kind of knowledge, didn't they?
certainly, yeah, with acoustics as well, yeah.
Dramatic. Next up, let's go to Doc in Petaluma, California. Hey, Doc, welcome.
Hey, thanks, George. Hi, Hugh. I got a question. Was there any kind of writing or script on the sites at all?
Yeah, there is actually. Yeah, there's some very interesting symbols have been found at Gobekli Tepe, and there's been some work done by my partner J.J. Ainsworth, but also Dr. Mano Savzidar and Robert Schock have been looking at some of the symbols as well, and I feature that in the new book actually, and it appears to be there's like a ancient Hittite script which goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years in Turkey. It's like Anatolian script. And some of the symbols are the same as what you find at Gobekli Tepe, although this Gobekli Tepe is 8,000 years older than that script. And they claim to have found the name of God. There's certain symbols, H's and different chevrons and other such thing. There's also carvings found on the top bedrock at Karahan Tepe, which people haven't been able to decode. And so it could be the very first language attempts to be put down in some kind of script at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe.
Hugh, wasn't the Sphinx buried too when they found it?
Yeah, that was certainly buried. Yeah, it was just like the head sticking out of the ground, wasn't it? I think that because it's sand there, it blows around. And
yeah.
Like that, it's a little bit different to southeast Turkey, which is much more rocky. So it's harder for nature to cover over these sites.
Brendan's with us in Austin, Texas. Hey, Brendan, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, George and Hugh.
Sure.
I've been to the Mexican pyramids, and much of it's still unexcavated. You'd think that we'd have dug it all up, but we haven't. And I was talking about megacities last night, and there's this ancient megacity in Darinku, Turkey, and one in Poland that's had 30,000 people and their animals underground. But I have two questions. Hugh, how many years have you been working in the ancient astronaut world?
Yeah, I've been at it for a while, probably 20, 25 years, something like that, I guess. Been fascinated. I mean, since I was a kid, I've been fascinated. I used to subscribe to this magazine called The Unexplained, and so I was really into UFOs and the paranormal stuff from a very young age.
With the AI that's coming in, how do you think the AI will change ancient astronaut and crop circle research in another 5, 10, or 20 years? That's my first question. And the second one, that beer wine, the ergot wine that you were talking about, do you know if that causes ergotism? Because that causes, their gangrene and their limbs to fall off in like a slow death. Was it like a gamble, or was it safe to drink like ayahuasca?
I think it was a bit of a gamble.
I would bet that too. That's right.
They came across it kind of accidentally. But we know that, looking at that kind of realm, then we know that, certain types of mushrooms would be growing. We know that the grasses out there were rich in DMT, the acacia grass, and things like this. And so, that could well be the case that they accidentally kind of made them kind of discoveries.
And he wanted a little know about artificial intelligence tied into some of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, really. I'm not sure. I mean, if you're talking about like decoding what all these mean, then that could be really intriguing. Yeah, I'm really not sure where that's going to lead in relation to these particular subjects.
Mayette is in New York. Hello there.
Yes. Hey, good morning. Excellent program. Hugh, I have a point of clarification and a two-part question, and I'll listen over the radio. First of all, expand on and clarify what you meant by Neolithic revolution. I want to also know whether you have considered or used remote viewing and or dowsing, including the pendulum and, the regular forked branch, in deciphering different aspects of all these sites, including its developers and builders. And the last part is George mentioned giants. You've referenced giants in your work and research. I got a book from a regular guest, Steve Quayle, And I hope you're familiar with that picture of that giant man. And George might know exactly more precisely what his height was because he was huge. And he was dwarfing two, ordinary-sized men that were almost like below his knees. And if you have my questions, and so glad, George, you and Tommy are back safe and had a great event. I'll listen over the radio. Thank you.
Yep, and the giant was about 12 feet tall, they say. But what do you know about Neolithic revolutions?
Yeah, basically the Neolithic revolution is what really archaeologists and historians call the transition from hunter-gathering to agriculture in the area of what's called the Fertile Crescent in the kind of Middle East. This is a whole kind of area where it all kind of developed. Originally it developed in Jericho, in like Israel-Palestine area, and then developed from there. But now they're realizing it was actually closer to Gobekli Tepe, the kind of Karakadag Mountain and other areas. And so where the first wheat, barley, and crops were being experimented with. And if you mentioned dowsing and
remote viewing, yeah.
And remote viewing, geomantic techniques, things like that. I'm fascinated by dowsing, and we've had we've been dowsing out there, myself and others. We found energy lines. The fact that this magnetic anomaly, the spiraling magnetic anomaly, is found in enclosure D is absolutely fascinating. That was actually found with sophisticated scientific equipment, and so that really solidifies the fact that there's something energetic was going on at these particular sites. And I think there was one other question. I've completely forgotten what that is.
Well, she wanted to know about the height of the giants, which I mentioned was 12 feet.
Yeah. As George mentioned, the giants, I think, are prevalent as well, were prevalent in that area. You look at even in the Book of Enoch, you look at, the biblical stories, this is the region, all this kind of stuff was happening with the spread of the Nephilim coming out of the Bible lands as well.
Hugh, is Turkey open to people investigating these structures, or are they pretty restricted?
It's a bit of both. I mean, you can go there. They're encouraging tourism. And so, we run tours out there regularly, but we tend to we go there for research and obviously with the tours as well. And they're open to it now because they want people to be going out there. They want people to feel comfortable visiting. They're allowing access to some of the sites. Now, you can't go right inside the middle of the sites or anything. You can't do that. They're very, because they're still excavating. So they have to protect sites. They have to protect it from looters. There's very high-level security there with army people kind of managing the sites. But it's a very nice place to visit. You can get to these sites. I think someone mentioned Derinkuyu, the underground city, as well. And there's a good chance that the underground cities of Cappadocia may have occurred just after the end of when Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe were finishing, and they actually went underground for some reason, perhaps because of the climate or solar flares or something like this.
All right, Hugh, we're going to come back and take final calls with you in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to our final segment. George Norrie here with Hugh Newman and your calls. Hugh, of every spot you've visited, which has been the most fascinating for you?
Yeah, well, I've got to admit, I think the southeast Turkey area is kind of blowing my mind consistently with all the new discoveries, especially Karahan Tepe. But I do get around. We do travel quite a bit, as much as we can. And, there's a few spots that have blown my mind recently. Well, one of these is actually when I managed to visit the Israel-Palestine area, actually back in February, and we saw the gigantic stone, the 570-ton stone, underneath the ground in Jerusalem. That was something I've been wanting to see for years, and that suitably blew my mind. But Karahan Tepe, Gobekli Tepe, all these sites are really where it's happening right now.
I sure hope they get that situation in the Middle East resolved, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
My gosh. What other sites could there be that we haven't discovered? So it's all speculation here. But do you think there are other sites that are uncovered somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're finding more things in many different parts of the world. I think the LiDAR scanning technology is revealing that. in the last couple of years, they found numerous, nearly 480 Olmec and Mayan potential sites in Mexico and Guatemala, for instance. I mean, that is an astonishing number. And I think if they apply that kind of scanning technology to southeast Turkey, I think they're going to be in for a big surprise.
Let's go back to the phone calls. This segment's going to fly by. International line, Don's in Alberta, Canada. Hey, Donald, go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, you. Speaking of time travel, I was actually texting in some information on how to do time travel, but getting to the I was looking online to see how hard it was for somebody to find the information on it, but the plans are very simple. Anyway, so getting into Stonehenge in England. Now, each stone is within half an inch of degrees, minutes, and seconds. They understood hyperdimensional physics. It also told them, because there's one in Florida that dinosaur Richard C. Hoagland dug up way back in the beginning of time. Anyway, but my question is it possible that these sites were all built at the same time? And the other thing was that Stonehenge, it doesn't activate all at the same time. There's been reports of when people go in there, they lose like a day or two of time, and they walk out and they think they were in there for 10 or 15 minutes. So these sites don't always activate at the same time. Like there's certain times when the natural earth energy lines up and activates the site. So I was just wondering if there was like what the connection is of all these sites and the mathematics involved, and whether the people that built Gobekli Tepe understood hyperdimensional physics, or there's too much to uncover and we're just not there yet to understand.
Where were they built, Hugh? Differently times or all about the same?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, because, interestingly, at Stonehenge, they found these giant wooden post holes made of pine that go back 10,000 years. And these are located just next to Stonehenge, within like 50 yards of the actual stone circle. But then apparently the stone circle wasn't built for another 5,000 years after that. And so that's an anomaly at Stonehenge. And yeah, there could be a case for that many of these sites could be much, much older. And as you said, the knowledge and information and the physics encoded within Stonehenge, we're finding now similar things in southeast Turkey, in Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe. And I think more needs to be uncovered to get more details about what you're talking about. But certainly, just the fact that we're finding number sciences, geometry, metrology already at Gobekli Tepe means there's something profound going on there.
What about the time lapses? Are there any there?
You get this. I mean, you get that with magnetic anomalies, and there is one at Gobekli Tepe. But I know people who've had direct experiences at Stonehenge where they've had. It seems to just like fizzing, like with like this electric charge, for instance. Where they've been there and they've had to walk away from it just to kind of feel normal again. And so, yeah, it feels random when these things happen, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe they're aligned to certain things in the cosmos and things occur. But, yeah, if you trace back, there are stories of people kind of vanishing from Stonehenge. There's UFO reports. Strange lights have been witnessed, electric shocks off the stones. And so, yeah, there's something very strange going on.
Up next, Sean is with us from Stockton, California. Sean, thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to focus on the ancient stonemasons. You've got the modern Masonic order, which is talked about on the show, that started in Europe, and it teaches that the ancient trade of stonemasons kept the craft of stonemasonry secret within their fraternity. Have you been able to identify how the trade would have evolved in the building of ancient structures and when it may have become an organized trade? Thank you.
Well, we get this, the Egyptian mystery schools, I think, are where this kind of is said to have come from. But then, if you look at, as we've just been discussing, if you look at Egypt, and you go back to the time of Nabta-Playa, which is like 5,000 to 6,000 BC, they were using the same geometries with specific astronomy in it. and as we get at Gobekli Tepe. And so, did it originally come from there? This is where everything kind of points back to. And so, if anything, the real information, the real innovation would have occurred at places like Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, southeast Turkey. It's hard to trace anything because the problem is that they were covered over and literally forgotten about for nearly 10,000 years. But we have found, it's something that Andrew Collins and some archaeologists have been doing. They found evidence of what's called the Helwan Point, which is an Egyptian area, a certain type of arrowhead found generally in Egypt that goes back, 10, 11,000 years. They found evidence of some of those in some of the sites, specifically in Baliklagol area of Şanlıurfa, where they found Urfa Man statue. They found points there which date back to a similar era. So there is a connection, a lineage, a timeline between Gobekli Tepe, Egypt, going into these Masonic traditions.
Let's go to Mary in New Jersey now. Hello, Mary.
How's everybody?
Everybody's good. Thank you.
I have two little questions. One is, where would their water supply come from? Their drinking water? Does it show evidence where they got their water? And the other one, I don't know if I have the place mixed up with something else. Are one of these places where if you're up in the sky, you can look down and they have like a drawing of a bird or whatever, and it was a runway? Is that the same place?
No, that is in Peru. Those are the Nazca lines.
Yeah, that's right. They're the Nazca lines. But the water thing is interesting because at specific sites like Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, they don't have any running water nearby and no underground water. So they actually carve out these like bell-shaped caves directly into the ground and collect rainwater. They harvest rainwater for these sites. And so I don't think these are domestic dwellings. These aren't where people live. These are ritual sites. These are innovation centers where people go on pilgrimage. But there are other sites in the area like Navali Churi, there's Kacheanu, there's a couple of other places. And they're all down by rivers and streams next to either the Euphrates or their tributaries or the Tigris. Some of the sites further east have this, and they're located next to the actual water, and they're clearly different. They're domestic sites. And so, so they did certainly, if they couldn't be near a natural water source, they would certainly collect water in these basins.
In these sites, Hugh, how close are they to civilizations?
Well, if you look at Karahan Tepe, it is in the middle of nowhere. It's a few. Nowadays, Gobekli Tepe is 15 miles from Şanlıurfa, a major city in southeast Turkey. It's actually the ancient Edessa. It's like the biblical city of Abraham. And Karahan Tepe is 25 miles southeast of Şanlıurfa. So currently, they're actually not really near civilization. And back then, they would have been even more remote. There's they would have been the civilization at the time.
Josh is with us in Florida now. Hello, Josh. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you doing? Great show, great guest.
Thank you.
If your guest ever heard about the Coral Castle here in South Florida, and I'm not sure if he touched already also about ley lines and if these sites are all kind of connected throughout.
All right, we'll talk about that. In Homestead, Florida, there's a site called the Homestead, Florida, which is built by Edward Leeds Skalnin, the late Edward Leeds Skalnin, a little guy from Latvia who was able to move these structures, said he knew the secret of the pyramids. Coral Castle.
Yeah, I've been there. Actually, it's an amazing place. That is astonishing. That's like a modern megalithic village, and so he somehow utilized the skills of the ancients into his construction. Rumors say he used some kind of magnetism combined with balance and certain techniques, and no doubt the ancients, were doing similar things. But ley lines. We found a whole bunch of ley lines. We feature these in the new book, actually. Between the sites there, they're dead straight alignments. We have quite a few very cool examples. We have some even going all the way from Gobekli Tepe through some of the sites in the area, all the way to places like Karahunj in Armenia, that stretch all the way to even Nam Madol in Micronesia, like 7,500 miles. And so we are finding extremely long ley lines. We're finding connections. There's a direct geodetic line between Gobekli Tepe and the Coricancha in the middle of Peru, and it's exactly 7.7928 miles, which is also the equatorial diameter of the Earth. So we're finding these geodetic distances between these major ancient capitals, which also both relate to the navel in their name, all over the world. And so it seems like Gobekli Tepe was the center of it all.
Let's go east of the Rockies. Glenn is with us in Nashville, Tennessee. Hi, Glenn. Go ahead.
Hello. This is such an interesting program tonight, George. I tell you, I could listen to this man for a couple of days.
Me too.
I wanted to ask you about the pyramids. I have been in the middle pyramid, and the steps going down are very narrow. But in the chamber in the bottom, it was a tomb for the king of Egypt. But are there specific mathematical relationships with the pyramid and other planets or some of the solar system that he is familiar with?
What could you say about the pyramids, Hugh?
Well, yeah, I mean, the pyramids are utterly mind-blowing, one of the last remaining wonders of the world, really. And, I mean, you can't help but accept that is one of the most remarkable things on the planet. I mean, when I first went there, the first thing I thought of was aliens did this because it's so outrageous. And that some of the geometry, the whole site itself kind of incorporates high-level physics, mathematics, geometry, number, metrology, and everything else you could think of. But we are actually finding the Egyptian cubit and the Royal Egyptian feet and things like this in Gobekli Tepe as well. And so we're finding the same number systems, the same information encoded. So does that suggest that the pyramids are older, that they're much, much older, like the age of the Sphinx, according to people like John Anthony West? Or is there a legacy that goes back to Gobekli Tepe where all these ideas started to be innovated?
Hugh, in addition to your websites, you're on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter X, right?
Yeah, all up on those, yeah, for sure.
It is truly remarkable. And so what's your next trip? Where do you go next?
Yeah, next trip, we're heading out to Egypt. The next year, we're heading back to Turkey. We're running some tours there. I'm launching the book at actually this weekend at CPAC, the Conference on Procession and Ancient Knowledge near Palm Springs, California. And then we're launching it in Britain as well at the Origins Conference on the 4th of November in Wiltshire. So, yeah, we've got quite a lot going on. We're going to be heading out again to Turkey for the winter solstice to witness the stunning alignment, which you can still see today, which is absolutely amazing. And, we're going to keep exploring.
Okay, my friend, you stay safe out there, okay?
Thanks, George.
Okay. Hugh Newman, his websites are linked up at coasttocoastam.com, and he is on YouTube, folks. You can find him under Megalithic Mania UK. He's on Facebook. You can find him at Megalithic Mania Official, and he's on Twitter as well with the same name. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Banal, George Knapp, Benny and Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.